Man, what's cracking with y'all, man? Shit, I don't know why I'm up so early, man. But you already know, man. It's that boy J Cast up here, man. I mean, shit, I'm gonna do more content, different videos, like different reactions and shit right now. But as of right now, kind of, getting feeling into the creepypasta vibe. So I'm gonna play this new story for y'all. It's called None of the Houses in My Town Had Doors. One Halloween, I Found Out Why. It's by Mr. Creeps. Posted 10 hours ago. I'm gonna put the link in the description. YouTube channel. Also, I'm gonna put my my other little shits in there too. So that being said, though, get to it. Record also is 6:33 a.m. right now, so I sound a little tired of shit. I'm up, gotta go to work, so fall back asleep for a minute. But it's a 16-minute video. Let's get into it. Like I said, I'm gonna try and stop at the least amount. I'm gonna try to stop the least amount I can. But I'm gonna give my feedback and details into it. But let's go.
I grew up in a small town with a population of only about 9,000 people. It was a nice, sleepy place with nothing really remarkable about it. Well, some people would point to the local gourd growing contest and disagree with me. But I never thought there was anything special about where I lived. That was until I turned 13. But I think I had my suspicions far before then. It was when I was 7 and watching something on television.
Remind you, it's called None of the Houses in My Town Had Doors. So, what do you find out at 13? Feel me?
I must have seen this show a million times before. But it was only then that it hit me that there was something off about every house I had ever seen on television. Namely, there was a door in the front. Of course, now I realize that such a thing is perfectly normal. But not then. None of the residential houses in my town had a front door or a back door, or any other kind of door leading outside for that matter. You're probably wondering how it was that we got in or out then. The answer varied. Some people would just climb in through a window built for that purpose. A lot of houses had a fire escape, the kind you might see in places like New York City, which could be lowered down so that people could climb up. The inside of our houses were normal though, with doorways and doors inside, no problem. Just no doors where they're leading right outside of the house.
1 sec, real quick. My bad, I paused the video for a sec, But let's get back into it.
They would knock on a window or ring a bell outside of one. Usually, it would leave a sign outside, leading up to the front of the house, telling people how they should announce themselves. Packages would usually be left below windows in case no one was home. The pizza delivery guy would tap on our window, and we would open it to take the pizza and hand over the cash. Now, this all must seem very silly to you, but I had grown up like this, and I had never questioned it. Not to say that this was true for all buildings in town. Public buildings like the school and such did have doors, but not the houses where people lived in. In addition,
See that make you think right there, like nothing that nobody lives in has a door that's low to the ground. They make you think like reason why it is made like this because every night something try to get into a house. Something want to get in. I mean, got 14 minutes left in the video. Don't keep going with it.
There was a rather strict curfew where everyone would go home by sunset. Again, I never really questioned the curfew, given that was just how I was raised. That was until I turned 13. Just like many teenagers, I began questioning many of the rules imposed upon me. However, I still stuck to the curfew given how strict our town was about it. That was, except for one night. A night that I won't forget as long as I live. It all started with my friend Dan. While I remember the events of that night vividly, what led up to the night is kind of hazy. I think that Dan had lost a bet, and as a part of that, he had to stay in the school on Halloween night past curfew. Either that or it was a dare. Regardless of how it all started, Dan and I had been as thick as thieves, so I knew that I couldn't let him go do this alone.
Should've.
Now, while curfew was enforced in my town rather strictly, it was generally okay if you were an hour or so late. Not so for Halloween. On that night, everyone, even the adults, went back home far before it became dark. As a matter of fact, we even did our trick-or-treating one day before, on October 30th, and that too while the sun was still up. My house didn't have a fire escape, so my choice of exit was a window on the ground floor. When my parents were busy with something in the kitchen, I gently slid the window open and hopped out. It honestly surprised me just how easy it was to sneak out. Then again, now that I think about it, I feel guilty, because it probably meant that my parents just implicitly trusted me that much. I landed on the ground lightly and slid the window so it was open just a crack for my return. I should have realized as I wandered around the street and saw no one that this was a bad idea. But when I saw Dan, my resolve strengthened, and we made our way to our school. "You have the camera?" I asked him. "Yeah," he said with a grin. I had always thought that there would be police cars or the like patrolling these streets during the curfew to enforce it, but no, the streets were totally empty. This should have been a clear message to us that we should have turned around, but we were two boneheaded teenagers and we thought nothing of it. The school itself had a strange haunting feeling to it. It wasn't helped by the fact that this was Halloween night, and the decorations everywhere leered at us. I knew that there was no way that I would have the courage to come here by myself if ever asked to. Man, who would have thought the day would come when you would sneak out of your house to go to school? I asked. Dan chuckled. He was rather famous for ditching school, but I was usually too chicken to join him. I was also kind of a bookworm and a teacher's pet, and I didn't want to miss out on school. And Dan could usually drag me into almost anything, but that was one of the exceptions. That was part of why I wanted to be with Dan this night. I wanted to finally do something really crazy during my adolescent years. "Hey, come here," Dan said. The front.
Alright, stopping at the 7 minute part. Reason why. A lot of signs is being not even looked at. No cops. The fact that the school have a very uneasy vibe to it. The fact that the school doors is to the ground. So it's like that's the opposite of how you live in. So therefore you should kind of assume like the opposite effects. Like you shouldn't be so comfortable and calm when, feel me, this type of shit is happening. So it's like, yeah. But I got about another 9 minutes left. See what happens.
Door's locked, but I left a window open. The two of us were used to jumping into buildings through windows, and we found ourselves inside of an old classroom that we had been in 2 grades prior. I was about to ask why he chose this one in particular, but then remembered that our new one was on the 2nd floor. So, what now? I asked as the two of us had made it inside. Dan turned on the camera and introduced himself. Yo guys, it's me, your boy Dan. And here we are at school on Halloween night, he said. His style was rather similar to those old school YouTubers. You can maybe even imagine him adding in that you should like and subscribe at the end of the video. So yeah, we're here, and just to prove that this was on Halloween, I'm leaving this right here. He pulled out a pine cone which he had painted blue. I'm going to put this on our desk to prove that we were here. If anyone in the morning saw that, they would just think that it was some weird art project that someone left. But anyone who saw that tape, they would know otherwise. Come on, Dan said, motioning for me to follow him upstairs. Now that I look back on the whole thing, it was odd that the door of the classroom wasn't locked, and that we could go wander around the school so easily. But thinking about it some more, it was obvious why they wouldn't bother locking it up, because no one was stupid enough to break in. We went up the stairs, and every single squeak and creak sent me nearly jumping out of my shoes. Dan shook his head as he saw me. He had nerves of steel. At least he did for now. The two of us walked into our classroom and set the pine cone on the table. Dan took out the camera to start talking to it again, when I heard something very loud. Dan stopped talking as I peeked out of a window. I saw some shadowy figures nearing the school. Dan, we're being found out. Dan took a quick look as well and motioned for us to hide. I didn't notice it since I got only a quick glance outside. But the figures, they all had very odd proportions. In other words, they were not human at all. But at the time, I really just assumed that our parents had come looking for us. Dan turned off his flashlight and also his camera.
2nd floor, random ass things following y'all. They know y'all in there. And it's just like, like, keep them doors locked.
And I turned off mine as well. After some whispering, we both decided to try and use the other set of stairs to get to a room at the back of the school. If push came to shove, we could get outside through a window and sneak out behind the school. It was a bit harder maneuvering given that we weren't using flashlights. But as we heard the sound of footsteps, We quickened our paces. "Here," Dan said while opening the door. Both of us ducked into a classroom, and I began wiggling a window free so we could get out. "Come on, Dan. Let's go," I told him. We had pretty much done enough risky things that night to become living legends among the class, as far as I knew. So, even if we hadn't technically spent the whole night at school, it was still pretty cool, and no one would look down on us. However, Dan seemed to be frozen in place for some reason. I tried shaking him, and he just pointed out the other window, out into the hallway. I couldn't see his expression in the darkness, and all he did to acknowledge my prodding was to raise his flashlight and turn it on. One of those things was standing right outside of the window. There was no other way for me to describe it other than a thing. It had to be about 7 feet tall. It had a lower body which was mechanical. Its upper portion was wearing some sort of military coat, and its head was smashed in and deformed. It only had one discernible eye, which was focused on us. Dan screamed, his nerves of steel broken, and I grabbed his hand and had to almost practically drag him out of the window. The two of us didn't look back as we raced back to our houses, in only half the time that it had taken us to get there. Needless to say, my parents were both very worried and very upset at me sneaking out. And oh, I was punished extremely severely for what I had done. But when I told them the story about what I had said, both of them had horrified looks on their faces. The two of them whispered to each other, and my dad told me a story. "Son, normally I would tell you this when you turned 18. But now that you've seen one of them..." "What are they?" I burst out. "Calm down. We don't know," my dad explained. "At some point during the Cold War, our town was a testing ground for the military. They were trying to create a new type of soldier, and it went wrong somehow and they just left. But then those things began wandering these streets at night, and they would burst into people's houses, knocking down the door no matter what it was made of, or how many locks you put on it. They could sense life, and we couldn't hide from them in any reliable way. One or two people were injured, and many just disappeared after encountering them. We thought about abandoning the town, but, well, we found a way to deal with them. Whatever programming they had a severe flaw. They couldn't find their way into places that didn't have a door. Seems like they wouldn't even identify it as a house. And so, that's why we make houses like this." "Why on Halloween, though?" My dad shrugged. "Some people say that they were made using malevolent spirits and fusing them with technology at the time somehow, which is why they become more active on Halloween. But no one knows for sure. Maybe that's the reason they can't get in if there's no door. Perhaps the spirit or entity they're based on can only get in through a doorway. Anyway, they may or may not turn up on any given night, but they are always active on Halloween. You two are lucky to have escaped." After the explanation, there was a lot of yelling, and long story short, I was grounded for most of my teenage years. With all that said, our town isn't a bad place. It's honestly really nice. Just in case you happen to visit, make sure to not stay around past night, especially if it's Halloween.
Alright. Liked it. Has some mysterious vibes to it. Let you know, yes, there's a reason they foreshadow a lot of things. Like, there's a reason why the houses don't have doors. You automatically start thinking because something will always get in no matter what. So, I mean, even if the door is locked, it don't matter. I liked it. Once again, the name of the story is called None of the Houses in My Town Has a Door. One Halloween, I found out. Creepypasta. I like it. Put a little bit of details into monsters. No, they describe only one monster. Group of them, though. Also, whenever they first got to the school, said there was a group of them. Described one of them. Showed the most fearless person screaming like a baby, had to be pulled out. But, like I said, it gave good characteristics of Dan, his friend, one monster. I think it's more of if that's gonna be like a town secret, it should be something that they should tell you as soon as you're able to start leaving the house. No stay out past this time because these motherfuckers gonna take your ass up and you ain't gonna come back. So it's like that should be told whenever they're allowed to start leaving the house or school and shit, But good story. It was a short one. It's about 16 minutes. So it was a short one. It was good. Narrated good. I mean, no violence, no gore like other creepypastas, which that's not always a bad thing. Build a little suspense, not too much, because you knew they was going to get out regardless. You knew they was going to get out because he's still alive to tell the story. I thought Dan would probably died or something, but still alive. No, they both scarred from it. Saw a man with one eyeball just staring at him. Like the backstory saying that Cold War experiment, super soldier, the man had metal like lower body. Talk about reason why on Halloween it's more active because of spirits. But it's active every day past I think the evening or some shit. It's active every day past 9 o'clock. So on Halloween though it's just more active. But I'm good. Again, I'm giving it a solid 5. Give it a solid 5. Nothing too much. Just good amount of detail. Describe the scenario. Good characteristics. Foreshadowing. Reasonable backstory for it. I mean, besides that, it's a good one. It's a good one. But it's about 7 a.m. And I'm going to end this video though. But like I said, I'm going to leave a link to the video in the description along with my IG, Twitter, and I don't know. I'm just getting used to the shit. That being said though, deuces. Boys, keep safe out there, man.